Good day, second year students. In the previous video lecture, we started a discussion on Francis Bacon about his life, his chief works, and his style of writing, and we also briefly discussed the main ideas of his essay of friendship. Today, I will explain in detail the text of the essay, and it's quite a long essay, so it will take 2 to 3 lectures to complete it. So, we will do it in parts. Let us begin with the text. It had been hard for him that spake it to have put more truth and untruth together in few words than in that speech. Whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. So Bacon begins his essay by referring to Aristotle's views in his book Politics, where he stated, whosoever, actually it is written whatsoever, but it is actually whosoever, there is a typing error. Whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. So Aristotle stated in his book Politics, in which he said, a man by nature and behavior is a social person. He is born to live in a society, and if a person is delighted in solitude, if a person doesn't like to live in the company of other beings, there are two possibilities for such behavior, either a wild beast or a god. First, he is an animal, therefore not suitable to live in a society, and the other possibility is that he is a god, because god is someone who is self-sufficient and who doesn't need other persons for survival, and god is someone who prefers to be alone. And that's why he said whosoever is delighted in solitude is either a wild beast or a god. And Bacon opens his essay with the views of Aristotle upon companionship, but he also stated in the very first line that it had been hard for him, hard for Aristotle, that spake is an old fashioned word. Today we say spoke, so it is spoke. So he had already stated, Bacon had already said that Aristotle combined in the statement, he put more truth and untruth together, because Bacon believes it is not entirely true. And he says, for it is most true that a natural and secret hatred and aversion towards society in any man hath somewhat of the savage beast. So, because Bacon believes it is not entirely true, and Bacon accepts Aristotle's idea that if a person has hatred for social company, then he is to some extent similar to an animal, but it is most untrue that it should have any character at all of the divine nature. But he does not agree to the idea that if a person chooses to be left alone or avoid society, then he is a divine person. So it is partly true and partly untrue. Except it proceed not out of a pleasure in solitude, but out of a love and desire to sequester a man's self for a higher conversation. Sequester means to withdraw yourself from society, to avoid company, to be left alone. So he doesn't agree to the idea that if a person chooses to be left alone or avoid society, then he is a divine person. But in the next line, he adds exception to this case when he says, if a person chooses a life of loneliness and cut off life, not for personal pleasure, but out of his desire, his wish to higher conversation. Higher conversation means to engage his mind into deep thinking, to contemplate or to connect with God sometimes, which is only possible in isolation. such as is found to have been falsely and feignedly in some of the heathen, an irreligious person who doesn't belong to any religion, or doesn't believe in religion, heathen, as Epimenides the Canadian, Numa the Roman, Empedocles the Sicilian, and Apollonius of Tyana. Now, in these lines, Bacon gives examples of some real people who withdrew from society to gain some philosophical knowledge, and he calls them heathen, an irreligious person. And these are Apollonius of Tyana and Epimenides the Canadian, Numa the Roman. Numa the Roman was the second Roman king, and the rest of the three are Greek philosophers and sages. So he says these people preferred isolation, and they also proposed some theories that were not accepted by the common people of that era, and that's why Bacon calls them, or calls their attempt at isolation, as false and feigned, something that is very questionable. Next he says, and truly and really in divers of the ancient hermits and holy fathers of the church. But he considers the isolation of ancient sages and holy fathers of the church as something real and true. When he says truly and really in the divers of the ancient hermits and holy fathers of the church, so according to Bacon, these were the spiritual men who really benefited mankind by their sermons and philosophical knowledge, and which they gained in isolation. So he kind of he's preferring solitude for some people, and so avoiding society for greater purpose is not bad at all times, according to Bacon. Next, move on to the next slide. But little do men perceive what solitude is and how far it extendeth. For a crowd is not company, and faces are but a gallery of pictures, and talk but a tinkling cymbal. Now, Bacon elaborates upon the concept of solitude, what solitude is, and he says people really do not understand this concept of solitude and how far it extended, how far it stretches. For a crowd is not company, and faces are but a gallery of pictures. Very true statement. He says that one must learn to differentiate between crowd and company. When we go out in a large group of people whom we do not know, that is a crowd and that is not a company. And he compares them to a gallery of pictures, unknown faces with whom we do not connect. And when we talk with these people, this talk is like a tinkling cymbal. Is comparing the talk to a tinkling cymbal. A cymbal is a musical instrument, and so that talk becomes a talk which we do not understand, which we do not reciprocate, and there is no meaning to it. So next he says, the Latin adage meeteth with a little, magna civitas, magna solitudo. Now Bacon quotes here an Latin proverb which can express this type of situation well. In Latin it is said magna solitudo, meaning great solitude in a great city. Because in a great town, friends are scattered, so that there is not that fellowship for the most part. because in a great city or large city, people are scattered and separated from one another by long distances. Makes it so it becomes quite impossible to connect or meet on a daily basis with their friends, and as it is possible in the small cities, so the connection breaks away sometime. But we may go further and affirm most truly that it is a mere and miserable solitude to want true friends, without which the world is but a wilderness. And next is that we will discuss this situation further, and we'll also prove that it is only the miserable solitude, miserable loneliness, which compels a person to make friends, without which the world is nothing other than that a jungle. And Bacon, and even in this sense also of solitude, whosoever in the frame of his nature and affections is unfit for friendship, he taketh it of the beast and not from humanity. Now is confirming to the theory of Aristotle, where he stated that if a person loves solitude, he is a beast. And he says, he firmly states that if a person in the right frame of his mind and nature avoids friendship and companionship, then he derives these features from animals. So he's like an animal, not a human, because human beings need other human beings to survive. He needs company. A principal fruit of friendship is the ease and discharge of the fullness and swellings of the heart, which passions of all kinds do cause and induce. Next, Bacon talks about the fruits of friendship. What is the utility, benefits of having a friend? So, here he's talking about medicinal and curative benefits of friendship. When he says, friendship helps in the ease and discharge of the fullness and swellings of the heart. In a way, it relieves our heart that is sometimes filled with different type of emotions, and they suffer and they cause pain to our heart. We know diseases of stoppings and suffocations are the most dangerous in the body, and it is not much otherwise in the body. So we can say is heart diseases are very dangerous to our health, and we all are aware about the diseases of heart, of stoppings and suffocation. Sometimes there is a blockage and it is very dangerous. So there is a remedy for these heart disease, and which can match the curative value of the presence of good friends, and by through lively chat and friendly conversation, and they unburden the heart of the sick person and make him feel good again. You may take surja to open the liver, steel to open the spleen, flowers of sulfur for the lungs, castoreum for the brain, but no receipt open the heart, but a true friend. Now is mentioning here some old-fashioned medical instruments by which they used to operate the body, and these are surja to open the liver, steel to open the spleen is another organ in our stomach, and flowers of sulfur for the lungs, castoreum for the brain. But there is no instrument to open the heart, but there is only one instrument, that is the presence of a true friend in our life, that can cure us of many dangerous diseases, that can save us from many diseases. To whom? To your friend, whom you may impart griefs, joys, fears, hopes, suspicions, counsels, and whatsoever lieth upon the heart, to oppress it in a kind of civil shrift or confession. So it becomes a bond between a friend and a person, that between the heart, a bond between the heart where one shares the emotions of his friend in full measure. Pleasant and intimate conversation with a friend can refresh our mood, and it brings back joy to our heart, and it relieves the suffering that is oppressing our heart, and it is like a confession that we make before a priest, and sometimes we confess before our friends to relieve our heart. So it becomes a remedy for our problems. So a good true friend plays a very important life in our life, in a very good way, in a very medicinal, curative way. Now, next, move on to the next slide. It is a strange thing to observe how high a rate great kings and monarchs do set upon this fruit of friendship, whereof we speak, so great as they purchase it many times at the hazard of their own safety and greatness. Hazard, hazard is a risk. Now, Bacon gives the examples of some monarchs and kings, some royal people and the elite class, the high class, who go to the unusual length to gain a friend and company of good people. They do set upon this fruit of friendship. They do try to seek this fruit of friendship, and so great as they purchase it, and sometimes to such extent they purchase it. It means that they try to buy it at many times at the risk of their own safety and their own greatness. The for princes, in regard of the distance of their fortune from that of their subjects and servant, cannot gather this fruit, except they raise some persons to be as it were companions and almost equals to themselves, which many times sorteth to inconvenience. So princes try to buy friendship, and the rich and the powerful often try to buy friendship by raising their status by giving gifts and reward or some special favors. And they raise some persons to their companions almost equal to themselves, and which many times results in their own inconvenience, in their own difficulties. The modern languages give unto such persons the name of favorites and privadoes, as if it were matter of grace or conversation. The individuals entering this circle of the royalty are known as favorites or privadoes. Privadoes is a Spanish word, and they were called in modern languages, they are called as favorites. And these individuals only add grace and give company like a friend to a royal person, but the Roman name attained the true sense and cause thereof, naming them participes curarum. But there is a Roman name for such people, and it is called participes curarum, means sharer of carers. And that means partners in their sorrows. They are the ones who share the anxiety and worries of the king, and they not just give company. For it is that which tieth the knot. So it is that bond, and it is the term that ties the knot between two people. And we see plainly that this had been done not by weak and passionate princes only, but by the wisest and most politic that ever reigned. And such practice of picking favored individuals from among the subjects was followed not only by the weak or emotional rulers, but also by very capable and wise rulers with great political intelligence that ever came to the throne, and who have oftentimes joined to themselves some of their servants, and they join their servants in their company, whom both themselves have called friends, and allowed other likewise to call them in the same manner, using the word which is received between private men. And the kings also join the company of their servants, and the kings also address these members of the favored circle very graciously as friends. And they ask other members of the royalty and bureaucracy to call them in the same manner. So, not only they call them friend, but they ask the members of the other royal members of their family to call them or address them so in the same manner as they do. So students, that's all for today's class. We will continue with the rest of the essay in the next class. Thank you.